Applause. We must recognize the moment in life when we become secondary characters in our own history. We accommodate ourselves to others, saying yes when we want to shout. We do not accept crumbs of respect. Respect for respect has taught us that being good means serving others. Putting others first is an act of love. Sacrifice is the most important thing. Virtue. But if all that has been the great lie that keeps us trapped in a life where others decide, then we must ask ourselves, how many times have you been caught in the conversation you did not want to have, a favor you did not want to do, a job you hate, or a relationship that no longer fills you because you felt selfish and thus spent virtue? But if all that has been the great lie that keeps us trapped in a life where others decide, then think about it. How many times have you been caught in the conversation you did not want to have, a favor you did not want to do, a job you hate, or a relationship that no longer fills you because you felt selfish? You've spent life giving, letting time meet time, patience, and even identity. But here's the great secret that nobody has said: there is no prize for the most sacrifice. There isn't a trophy for being the one who endures more, bears more on their shoulders, or adapts more. You only wear frustration and a life full of I wish. This book is your point of bankruptcy. You are here for a reason. You have a voice that has been screaming for attention. It wants to be heard. It wants to take back control. It wants to learn to set limits without feeling guilty. It wants to stop living in fear. This is not a conventional self-help book. You are here for a reason. There's a voice in your mind that's been screaming for attention. It wants to be heard, to take back control, to set limits without feeling guilty, and to stop living in fear. This isn't a typical self-help book. You won't find any cliché statements here. This is a book about self-discovery. Establish your self-esteem with affirmations. Exercise your mirror muscles. This is a revelation, a guide for you to learn from. Laughter is the best medicine. Recover your power. Discover how the human mind works when it is afraid of saying no. The more you give, the less they value you. Learn the art of prioritizing without feeling selfish. Don't worry about what others will say. When you start thinking about you are perfect, it's clear that you've spent too much time living with guilt and conditioning. But don't worry, when you're done with this book, you'll laugh at everything you thought you knew. This book isn't just a theory, it's an experience. Once you enter her, you'll never be the same. It's time to change the rules of the game. It's time to live from the Valentine chapter, a manual of survival for souls. Intelligence is relative, but in practice, it seems optional. There are people with a bright intellectual coefficient capable of solving equations in seconds, but they follow. They are trapped in lives that hate them, relationships that wear them out, and routines that they hate. That is intelligence. It has not become an art that few dominate. If life were a competition, there would be millions of experts who do not. I have a question: why do we spend so much money denying ourselves? It's because we were programmed since childhood with phrases like, I know you do not feel bad about others if you can help them, and there you see, in adulthood, trapped in absurd commitments, sitting at weddings of people who do not even know, charging boxes in mockers of others, accepting unnecessary meetings, all because we are afraid to pronounce two simple letters. You don't want that. The test asks anyone if they have ever agreed to do something just to avoid the drama of saying no. I assure you that the answer will be a resounding yes. Guilty, accompanied by a sigh of resignation. Facundo Cabral used to say that people are in two ways, for love or convenience. If you have a past life, saying yes when you wanted to say no, most likely that has been the emotional butler of more of an opportunist. But don't worry, you are not. Mark's group said that never would enter a club that would accept it as a member. Those who do not know say that we are not honorary members of the club of those who always say yes. But enough of theory. We will go to the practice. In a corner of the world where few look, happens something that is worth the sorry. Javier was one of those guys that they never knew. Their day neighbor asked him to take care of the dog for a night. Javier rejected clear with ease. The problem was that the dog had the temperament of a demon on steroids. At dawn, his room looked like a field battle. The neighbor went to find his brother and said, "Can stay 2 more days. Have nowhere to leave it." Javier, with the shattered soul, said yes again. 2 days later, the same story. When the neighbor finally decided to refuse, he sighed, disappointed, and said, "I thought you were." He was a good person, and the master coup was to blame. The problem is not just learning to say no. You must learn to live with others' reactions. When you do, people will look at you as if you had kicked a puppy. Those who benefit from your docility will try to make you feel bad. But here's the great revelation: it's not your fault. Learning to say no is not an act of self-defense. Esteem is the first step in choosing yourself. Once you master it, life will begin to look more like what you really want, because the real question is not why it costs us, but rather how long you will keep saying yes to a life you don't like. It is not a revolution. It is silent on the day you decide to prioritize without justifying or decorating it with excuses. The universe will enter a short circuit, not because something mystical happens, but because the people who have accustomed to seeing you as an inexhaustible resource will enter. You are suddenly overcome with panic because someone who had never shown interest in your time or needs is now paying attention to you. You are wondering why good things have been happening to you lately. You are aware that you have been acting strangely, and you recognize that this is the panic disguised as concern. You are experiencing a change syndrome. Unexpected people are not afraid of you. They are afraid of the version of you that always existed. He said that Martin had been the man more helpful in the office if someone needed to be covered in a meeting. He raised his hand if the boss asked volunteers for an extra project. He was a man without extra salary until one day he woke up with a revelation: nobody respected him for being so useful. He decided to experiment on Monday. When your boss approached you with the infallible phrase, "Would you bother to do me a favor?" Martin simply replied, "Not." The entire office seemed to stop in slow chamber. How not so simple? "No, I can, but you have always been able." Today did not. Martin felt something strange in his chest. It was power, not the power over others, but about his own existence. The news of his insurrection spread, and his companions' work began to observe it with a mixture of admiration and horror, as if they had witnessed the equivalent of an escape from prison. The funniest part came then. People stopped asking for things because say no and the world will change. Energy vampires will look for another victim. Martin did not become a villain, he ceased to be the secondary character in his own life. This is the true lesson: when you learn to say no, you stop being an extension of others' will. Saying no is not just a necessity at work or in relationships, it's a philosophy of life. Saying no doesn't hurt us. It steals our peace and ties us to a version of ourselves that we don't want. The great thinkers of history weren't people who said yes to everything. We go further because it's not just necessary at work or in relationships to say it. It's a philosophy of life. It doesn't hurt us. It steals our peace. It ties us to a version of ourselves that we don't want. The great thinkers of history weren't people who said yes. They dared to challenge the rules and reject what didn't resonate with their truth. We're trapped in the custom of pleasing those who never think twice about what's good for us. But here's the secret: people who really love you respect that you value them. They dare to challenge the norm and reject what didn't resonate with his truth. We're trapped in the habit of pleasing those who never think twice about what's best for us. Here's the secret: people who really love you will never disturb your well-being. Those who get angry aren't people who care, they are people who care about what they can get from you. So, the next time someone tries to manipulate you with the classic phrase, "After everything I have done for you," respond with a smile, "After everything you've done for me." Look how the conversation stops. He will never disturb your welfare. Those who get angry are not people who care. They just want something from you. So, the next time someone tries to manipulate you with the classic phrase, "After everything I did for you," respond with a smile. "After everything you've done for me," or "what I got from me." The conversation stops. It's the sound of an Egger bomb Lewis exploding. It took a whole life to understand that recognizing the fault is the most sophisticated tool of manipulation that exists. Nobody likes feeling like a bad person. So, when someone launches us "After everything I did for you," our instinct makes us go back and fall into the trap. The worst is that many times, we don't even realize. The sound of an ego bomb exploding has taken a whole life. The fault is the most sophisticated tool of manipulation that exists. Nobody likes feeling like a bad person. So when someone launches us "After everything I did for you," our instinct makes us go back and fall into the trap. The worst is that many times we don't even realize that what they did for us was something we never asked for. We were entangled in an invisible emotional debt that made us give without thinking. It is not cutting that thread, it is refusing to play a game in which only one of the participants is forced to lose. In the history of humanity, there have been geniuses who understood this perfectly. Mark Twain used to say that the problem with the world is that people who are sure of everything are not right, and those who doubt themselves are usually right. It is exactly how the fear of not, those who do not have the slightest scrupulous in demanding favors, move with the assurance that the universe owes something, while those who doubt themselves feel. Those who are certain of themselves are not right, and those who doubt themselves are usually right. Those who demand favors with no hesitation feel that rejecting a favor is equivalent to committing a crime. They think that every time they agreed to do something they didn't want, they were not uncomfortable. They say yes when they want to say no. Imagine the other person who asked you. Imagine that they stayed awake wondering if they had spent you. Imagine that they felt remorse for having put you in that position. You know that rejecting a favor is equivalent to committing a crime. You know that you agreed to do something you didn't want because you didn't want to feel uncomfortable. You know that you said yes when your mind shouted, "Not now." Imagine the other person who asked you. Imagine that they stayed awake wondering if they had put you in that position. The answer is not, because people who manipulate with guilt never think about the load they put on others, only in how they can get what they want. The irony is that when you start saying no, suddenly you discover who your true friends are. There are people who were only close to you because you were convenient, because you are in that position, because people who manipulate with guilt never think about the load they put on others, only how they can get what they want. Irony is that when you start saying no, you suddenly discover who your true friends are. There are people who were only close to you because you were convenient, because they knew that they could count on you for everything. You don't need 20 friends, you need 2 or 3 people who really respect you and love you for who you are, not for what they can get out of you. Facundo Cabral said it with a brutal simplicity: if they are stealing your peace, they are stealing you as valuable. You need 2 or 3 people who really respect you and love you for who you are, not for what they can get out of you. As Facundo Cabral said, if they are stealing you, they are stealing your peace. What do you have? Without peace, there is no clarity. Without clarity, there is no happiness. Then, what is the use of pleasing others if it is you who pays the price? It is not about becoming insensitive or living in a constant state of negativity. It is about finding balance. If you don't, you set your limits. You must understand that without peace, there is no clarity. Without clarity, there is no happiness. It is not about becoming insensitive or living in a constant state of negativity. It is about finding balance. If you don't set your limits, no one will do it for you. People get used to receiving demands to wait for you to be there when they need you. But when you need something, suddenly you're busy. Suddenly, they don't suddenly have time. Problems are not so important. Saying no is an act of justice. It returns the same weight that has put you on top. It is to stop making favors to people who would never move a finger for you. It is to understand that being good does not mean being an emotional slave to others. The day you stop accepting unnecessary commitments is the day you begin living your life. You must give yourself time to enjoy the amazing things in life. You must realize that there are pleasures you had forgotten because you were too busy meeting other people's expectations. You must have a coffee without hurry, walk aimlessly, or read a book because no one is waiting for you to ask. These are small freedoms that feel immense when you have lived tied to the will of others. Now, the most important question of all: who is your life? If the answer is not yours, then it is time to recover it, because nobody else will. You will live for others, but many will gladly use your time, energy, and effort to their benefit. The only way to avoid this is to learn to say no. At first, you may feel guilty, as if you were challenging a universal law. But then, you realize that you have something to offer. The world keeps turning, and people keep moving on with their lives. Those who moved away are probably not for the right reasons. We have grown up with the misguided idea that our worth is tied to the utility we provide others. We have been taught that we are good people if we are always available, if we sacrifice our time and energy for others. But the true goodness is not found in being. What do you prefer, being someone who betrays himself to look good with others, or being someone who lives with the peace of mind that each thing he does is because he really wants to do it? It is no accident that most admired people in history have been those who said yes to everything but knew how to reject what didn't suit them. Einstein refused to follow rigid academic rules because his way of thinking didn't fit into such a structured system. Gandhi said no to violence when everyone expected the opposite. Marie Curie rejected the idea that a woman couldn't lead an advanced scientific team. The great changes in the world have been the work of those who have learned to put limits on things. He does not go with me, not to betray fit. But here is the trap in which many fall: confuse limits. It's wrong to think being selfish means not caring about anyone but yourself. Setting limits is not being selfish. It's not about not caring about other people, it's about caring about yourself. It means understanding that you can't give your best if you spend your life frustrated and doing things you don't want to do. Saying no is not enough. You have to learn to support others' reactions, because when you start changing and prioritizing, there will be people who try to make you feel guilty. They will tell you, you are different now. You are more accessible, and they will say it because it's true. You have changed, but not for the worse. You will be the ones who try to manipulate you with phrases like, "But always you thought I could count on you." They will say, "What costs you? Before you were more generous." That is where you must resist the temptation to explain too much. You do not owe anyone a justification. Look how they react when you say no, and you will discover who really appreciates you and who only pretended to. You were useful because you showed real love. Those who respect you don't measure what you can do for them, but who you are. When you reach this point, your life begins to fill with peace. You're not running from one place to another, fulfilling commitments you don't want to fulfill. You're not feeling exhausted by trying to please everyone. You're at peace. You finally realize that you don't need others' approval to live the life you want. Best of all, say no to what you don't want and yes to what you do. Take control of your time and energy. Focus on what nourishes you and makes you good. Next time someone asks you to do something you don't want to do, don't make excuses. Don't ask yourself if you should accept. Remember, your peace is the price of a favor. The cost is too high. Saying it is not bad simply reminds the world that you live your time and energy, and nobody is entitled to use it without you. Chapter 2, Permission Captains at Shadows. Julia was not a hermit or a rebel without cause. She simply wanted to try what would happen if she stopped being available all the time. If not, she would justifiably be absent. If he did not act as a service operator to a customer with 24-hour availability, then he would be out of place. His attention was not easy to come by. The first time he ignored a message, he felt no guilt. The second time was easier. The third time, he noticed something interesting: people were accustomed to it. What surprised him the most was the lack of claims, but the change in dynamics. The conversations were no longer an update list, they were interesting. The meetings stopped being routine when people appeared. He really valued her, and best of all, he felt more like discovered that the world is not falling apart. You just have to decide not to be in all parts. Affection is not measured by the speed with which you answer a message. Real connections depend on authenticity, not frequency. However, nobody mentions one important detail: learning to be less available changes the way others see you and how you see yourself. Suddenly, when he stopped doing things out of obligation, he met a candid. It was absurd to think about having so much free time. It was even more absurd to realize that when you don't know what to do with yourself, the problem of living for others is that when you finally return to time, you have no idea what to do with yourself. Julia stared at the roof one afternoon and thought, now what? Because he didn't realize that there was always something more important than talking to someone who needed it. I couldn't ignore it. When I finally ceased to be trapped in the inertia of the immediate response, I discovered an entire world of options. I was surprised by the number of things that interested him. I found ignored books I had bought but never read. I found places I had wanted to visit but always postponed. I found things I had wanted to learn but that he never found the time to start. I understood another great truth: we have time. We give up without realizing that time is spent on commitments, both large and small. We spend 5 minutes answering messages, 10 minutes in conversation that doesn't go anywhere, and 20 minutes doing favors we don't want to do. At the end of the day, we look at the clock and ask why we feel like we haven't done anything for ourselves. Julia decided to do something radical. She began to claim her time, not in great gestures, but in small ones. I made decisions, and I did not hesitate. I postponed what was not urgent and chose in which conversations I wanted to be. Little by little, his life began to feel his own, and best of all, He did not lose anyone important in the process. The people who are worth something never go because you learn to give yourself your own space, and those who leave are never for the right reasons. Maybe because we taught that life should feel like a constant effort. History has proven that the best solutions are usually the simplest. The most difficult thing to do is break down Stoics. They talked about the virtue of tranquility, the state in which everything becomes simple because you are no longer caught in the collective hysteria. He has developed an impressive talent for converting the everyday into an odyssey, far from simplifying. It's pointless. We're always busy. We brag about not having time. We complain about not getting enough rest, acting like exhaustion is a badge of honor. If someone takes it easy, we call them irresponsible or a dreamer. True intelligence is finding a way to do less without looking like you're doing less. The most cunning have dominated this art because productivity is not about the amount of effort, but about the ability to solve what's necessary without filling your day with unnecessary obligations. The best thinkers in the story didn't spend their days running from one place to another, fulfilling endless lists of tasks. They found a way to do what's essential and delegate the irrelevant. They understood that the real value is not in the "you have a limited amount of time to live your life. Don't waste it." This isn't an invitation to be lazy. It's a reminder that we often wear out things that nobody asked us for and nobody will remember. The more we fill our lives with trivial things, the less space we leave for what really matters. You have to learn to release dead weight. Don't do it as an act of rebellion. Do it as a strategy of survival. Life doesn't reward. It is clear that those who earn more tend to live better. The human tendency to prioritize certainty in thought is problematic. We seek promises, guarantees, and answers written in stone. However, life does not operate with an instruction manual. We continue to question things as if the answers will magically solve our existence. What would happen if we spent a day without searching for explanations, without trying to make sense of everything, and without worrying? I interpret each gesture, each word, and every absence. I live one day at a time, not spending each second analyzing. Microscopic nos terrify because we are scheduled to fill the gaps if someone does not respond fast. We assume that there is a problem if a friend changes. We believe that something is wrong if a person shows different. We automatically look for reasons. We can't stand the mystery, but life was not made to be understood completely. We must accept that life is meant to be lived. We can't force our way through it and expect to find answers. That's not what most people want. Life is not all clear, but we should learn to laugh at the confusion. We should learn from the geniuses of humor. They have the ability to make fun of everything they take too seriously. Life has weight, but sometimes the trick to understand something is to learn to look at it from a light perspective. The uncertainty is not in us, it is in the need for control. Better things in life do not come with a plan, but with the ability to adapt and laugh at the process. The best strategy is not to look for the answer, but to learn to ask better questions. Above all, accept that nothing in life needs to be resolved. The world accepts things without asking questions when a fish appears naturally. If another creature changes, it follows its size. But a captain decides to collect his ship in silence. Nobody realizes until the port has changed. This is the true autonomy strategy. It's about making noise, about moving without resistance. People really have control of their lives. They don't say aloud or publish it. They don't try to convince anyone that they are independent. The world is confused by this. We're used to independence fighting and defending itself. But the reality is that true autonomy is exercise without explanation. Some mistakenly think that recovering control means facing everything. Their world is confused by this. We're used to independence fighting and defending itself. But the reality is that true autonomy is exercise without explanation. Some mistakenly think that recovering control means facing everything. They tell their friends, who no longer make favors, that they need space. They justify their boss's tardiness, but the fund is all that is needed to continue asking permission. The true captain does not ask permission. They take the helm and let the world adapt. The most interesting thing is that when you stop warning, you will no longer have to make excuses or justify your decisions. You will not need to ask for permission to take action. When you act with conviction, you will not face rejection. People get upset with those who are hesitant, not with those who are firm. Those who change course with decision-making do not generate rejection, they generate respect. The most admired people in any field are not the ones who live justifying their decisions. They are the ones who take action. You will do when you act with conviction. No one gets upset because people don't know. They get upset with those who doubt. Those who change course with decision do not generate rejection, they generate respect. The most admired in any field are not the ones who live justifying their decisions. They are the ones that simply take them. The secret is not disappearing or cutting ties or becoming inaccessible. The secret is to learn to exist under your own terms without advertising it. If you don't want to go to an event, you don't need a speech. Just say, "No, I can," and continue with your life. If someone asks for a favor and you don't want to do it, don't bother explaining why I just gave. Now it is not possible, and let the conversation follow your course. If a group asks you why you are more distant, you don't have to justify. You just give, "Here I am." Still good. Change the subject because people only resist when they feel they have the power to negotiate. But when you act naturally, the world accepts your freedom is having the confidence to live life on your own terms. It's not about being cold or distant, it's about being self-assured and confident. You don't need to convince anyone of your ideas because true courage isn't about shouting. Independence isn't about fighting with the world to prove something to anyone. Many people struggle to be autonomous because they try to prove something to everyone. Freedom is having the confidence to be cold or distant. It means learning to be free without convincing anyone. You are because true courage is not shouting. Independence is living. Many people struggle to recover their autonomy by fighting with the world and explaining too much. They debate with people who will never understand. But the one who has really understood life knows you don't need the approval of anyone. A captain does not discuss with each sailor on the ship's direction. Simply mark the course, and here is where the great secret of peace enters: mental. When you stop explaining, people stop waiting for explanations. The people who dominate his life are not the ones who are isolated. Understand this, you don't need anyone's approval. A captain doesn't discuss the ship's direction with each sailor. He simply marks the course. This is where the great secret of peace enters. When you stop explaining, people stop waiting for explanations. Those who dominate his life are not the ones who are isolated or who disappear. Those who fight for their space are what they want to do without. Rodotto is like someone who has always said that he suddenly says that. Not with peace of mind at the beginning. People are surprised, but they get used to it over time because life becomes your norm if you are always available. People expect you if you start being. Those who fight for their space are free to do what they want. Rodotto is like someone who suddenly says that, not with peace of mind at the beginning. People are surprised, but they get used to it over time because life becomes your norm if you are always available. People expect you if you start being more selective with your time. People adapt if one day you decide to prioritize. Their world continues touring. Anything is as serious as we believe, but what is serious is to spend life being a passenger in your own boat because the only thing you really have is your time and energy. If you give them without thinking, one day you will wake up and realize. You must be more selective with your time. People adapt. If one day you decide to prioritize, the world tour will continue. Anything is as serious as we believe. But what is serious is to spend your life being a passenger in your own boat because the only thing you really have is your time and energy. If you give them without thinking, one day you will realize that you have lived everyone but yourself. So, sail with strategy. Move. Intelligence remains part of the world, but in your own way. Do it without ads, without statements, without explanations, because the real captains do not need to shout. They simply carry the helm. There are people who spend their lives imagining what they would do if they were brave. You have lived everyone but yourself. Sail with strategy. Move. Intelligence remains part of the world, but in your own way. Do it without ads, without statements, without explanations. The real captains do not need to shout. They carry the helm. There are people who spend their lives imagining what they would do if they were brave. They are trapped in theory. They rehearse speeches in their mind. They perfect plans, design, review 1,000 times what they would say at the moment. Correct, but that moment never comes. The problem is not the lack of opportunities. It's not even the lack of motivation. It's the fear of taking the first step without certainty. And it's changing. All because people who achieve things in life are not there. We are trapped in theory, rehearsing speeches in our minds, perfecting plans, and reviewing 1,000 times what we would say at the moment. The problem is not a lack of opportunities or motivation. It's the fear of taking the first step without certainty. People who achieve things in life are not those who are less afraid, but those who are not left paralyzed by fear. Fear has many forms. We can disguise fear as logic or present ourselves as that voice inside that perhaps says, later. Most people do not stop because something external sizes them up, but because they have internally learned to obey an alarm system that sounds every time they approach unknown. It's ironic. We must be less afraid and not be paralyzed by fear. Fear has many forms. Dare to disguise yourself as logic or present yourself as that voice inside that says, perhaps most people do not stop because something external sizes them up, but because they have internally learned to obey an alarm system that sounds every time they approach unknown. It's ironic that we complain about what we don't change. We want a different life, but we paralyze the possibility of losing what we know. We want to evolve, but we feel vertigo when we are faced with the precipice of growth. If someone told us there is a guaranteed path that we can transform ourselves without risks, without uncertainty, without discomfort, we would follow it. We would take that path without hesitation, but it doesn't exist. The only real shortcut in life is the one taken with courage, and courage is not an emotion or a moment, it's a decision you make when no one is watching. It's a pact you make with yourself, without witnesses, without guarantees, and without knowing exactly what's at stake. We would take it without hesitation, but that option is not available. The only real shortcut in life is the one taken with courage. And courage is not an emotion, glorious or a moment. It is a decision you make when nobody sees you. It is to sign pact with oneself without witnesses, without guarantees, without knowing exactly what is coming. Then, who has understood this stops. Ask yourself if you are ready and simply start. Not because it doesn't feel fear, but because you have discovered that fear does not disappear over time, but with action. Those who dare to take the first step, even though it is uncertain, discover something that the rest of you will never know. Fear is it's coming. If you're ready, start now. Don't let fear hold you back. Those who dare to take that first step will find something that others won't. Fear is a shadow that lengthens when you look too much, but that dissolves as soon as you walk to the light. That light is no longer anything that life lived in your own terms. A man who specializes in postponing his own decisions will one day have an idea revolutionary enough to change his life with absolute certainty. Universe, I would have sent him a message personalized is now or never. He got up with energy, willing to do everything that had been promising for years. The phone quickly buzzed with a message about your new life. Just news, just a short video. 3 hours later, he was still sitting in the same position with the cold cup between his hands and I would have sent him a personalized message, it's now or never. He got up with energy, ready to take on everything he'd been promising for years. The phone buzzed with a message about your new life. Just news, just a short video. 3 hours later, he was still sitting in the same position, with the cold cup between his hands and a mental list of excuses. Today is not the day. Tomorrow will be better. Better with energy. Better when I have more clarity. Better when the universe gives me another signal. And so, without postponing existence, because the big problem of fear is not that you paralyze yourself, the feeling that tomorrow is the same is valid for moving today. Time is not an infinite road, it's a train in which each station you leave behind is one you never again will see. The most absurd is that it is not necessary to be brave to change, you just need to move. No one feels absolutely ready before doing something important, but those time is not an infinite road, it's a train in which each station you leave behind is one you never again will see. The most absurd is that you don't need to be brave to change, you just need to move. No one feels ready before doing something important, but those who hope to feel ready end up becoming experts from waiting. The worst that can happen to a human being is not failing, but becoming a teacher by postponing one's own life. Diego always told me that I had huge potential. They repeated, I could do what you want in life. There was a problem, though. When you can do what you want, the question becomes, Diego always believed he could do anything in life. He had a lot of potential, but he couldn't make a decision. He felt overwhelmed by the choices before him. He thought that if he made the wrong choice, it would be a mistake. He couldn't decide if he should stay where he was, or if he should travel, study something new, or move to a different city. Then one day, a friend of his got tired of listening to him. Diego, I am telling you, I am changing my plans because I'm not going to waste my life. I sighed. I am waiting for the perfect moment. My friend was silent, and then he smiled, clearly knowing something about chess. Diego frowned. What does chess have to do with this? The friend took his phone and found a phrase. He showed it to the screen. It was an appointment with a champion for the World Cup. They lose when they wait for the play. Perfect. Diego felt his brain reconfigure in real time. He spent his whole life believing that one day I was going to wake up with absolute clarity, with unwavering security, and a certainty that would advance without hesitation. But reality was different. People who achieved things did not. It was the one who knew exactly what to do, but the one who moved the pieces, although not. They were sure which was the best play, and there was the secret. Life is not a board where you can stay looking forever until you discover the ideal movement. Life is a sun watch that keeps running. And yes, do not move, you lose by inaction. That was the first time. Diego knew courage is not a feeling, but a habit. No one feels brave before jumping, but those who jump find out they can fly. Fear does not disappear with time, it disappears with movement. Life does not forgive those who spend too much time calculating the perfect step instead of taking it. Diego spent days going around in circles, and then he realized his whole life had been a board of chess that never ended. Play had been ready to, he moved chips, but he left them waiting for the perfect inspiration alignment star, the approval of the universe. But the universe was not waiting for him. He decided to notice patterns in his life that seemed normal before the moment in which he felt change. He thought it should wait, though, and clear the relationship. He had wanted to finish much earlier, but he continued because it was not the best moment. He postponed the projects that excited him because they were not yet enough. Fear had disguised logic in each of those cases. The trick was not that he did not know what to do. It was that his brain made him believe that thinking about doing something was the same as. The human mind is an artist of evasion. We build elaborate theories about the future, convincing ourselves that we are not yet ready to act. But the only way to learn to do something is to die. Diego realized that courage does not arrive before action. Action is what brings courage. The human mind is an artist of evasion. We build elaborate theories about the future, convincing ourselves that we are not yet ready to act. But the only way to learn to do something is to die. Diego realized that courage arrives after action. Action brings courage. No one feels prepared before changing. Life offers absolute certainties before taking an important decision. Those who expect clarity before acting end up making excuses, calling themselves prudent. So, for the first time in a long time, he decided to do something without thinking too much. It was not a great change, nor was it irreversible. Take a risk. You're not going to feel prepared before taking action. Life gives no guarantees before making a decision. Those who expect clarity before acting end up making excuses and labeling themselves as prudent. So, for the first time in a long time, he decided to take action without overthinking. It wasn't a significant change, nor was it irreversible. It was just one movement. It was a person who had been postponing a conversation. He published that text that had been on his computer for months. It was registered in a course, but he hadn't asked himself if it was the right time. Something strange happened, but he felt a great epiphany. There were no fires, artificial, but he felt a sense of relief because he understood that life doesn't reward those who think about it. It rewards those who do. How much? Sometimes, we convince ourselves that something is impossible without having it. Even once the mind is filled with stories about what could go wrong and what would happen if you're afraid of the chaos that would result from acting on your true desires. But when you finally take action, you realize that most of your fears were unfounded. Fear is like a closed door in a dark alley. At a distance, it seems impossible to cross, and it's as if there's a lock demanding a key you don't have. But when you approach and push it with, fail to see the chaos that would result from acting on our true desires. When you finally do, you realize that most of your fears were unfounded. Fear is like a closed door in a dark alley. At first, it seems impossible to cross, and it feels like you need a key you don't have. But when you approach and push it, you discover that the door was never closed. The only lock was your fear. Diego understood this clearly. It's ridiculous to fear something that doesn't really exist. Then comes the great revelation: there are no perfect decisions. The human being has this absurd idea that there is only you must realize that he was never closed. The only lock was your fear of it. Turn the pickport, Diego understood it with clarity. It's absurd to have feared something that doesn't really exist. Then comes the great revelation, there are no decisions. Perfect. The human being has this idea that there is only one way, the correct option, an ideal destination, an immovable that must be discovered. But life is not a movie with a single script, it is an improvisation. Those who dare to move find all responses in the immediate, but they find something better, the power to adjust the course on the march. Here is the great irony, there's no way to correct an ideal option. A destination is immovable that must be discovered. Life is not a movie with a single script, it's an improvisation. Those who dare to move find all responses in the immediate, but they find something better, the power to adjust the course on the march. Here's the great irony, you don't need courage to do something. Doing it is what gives you courage. When you understand that, life stops feeling like a waiting room and becomes an adventure where every step, even the clumsy one, is better than being still. Chapter 3, The Courage, the Fuel of the Great Experiences. Martina lived, convinced that wonderful things you don't need courage to do something, doing it is what gives you courage. When you understand that life is an adventure, where every step you take, even the clumsy ones, is better than staying still, you'll know what I mean. Martina lived with the conviction that wonderful things only happened in others' lives. She was an expert in enjoying adventures from a distance, prudent like someone who watches a movie and gets excited by the scenes, but never proposes to live something similar. They loved the stories of people who renounced everything to travel, the narratives of those who bet on their more absurd dreams. Martina was an expert in enjoying adventures from a distance. He was prudent, as someone who watches a movie and gets excited by the scenes, but never proposes to live something similar. They loved the stories of people who renounced everything to travel, the narratives of those who bet on their more absurd dreams. Legends were even made about individuals who one day raised and radically changed their destiny. Martina preferred the comfort of an own sofa to the uncertainty of a vacuum jump. Martina was not unhappy, but he did not feel that fullness inexplicable that some describe as having chosen to live really, although legends abound about individuals who radically altered their destinies. Martina, however, preferred the comfort of a familiar sofa to the uncertainty of a leap of faith. She was not unhappy, but she also felt a profound sense of fulfillment that some describe as living life to its fullest. However, on a Thursday, while the sun poured over the city, and it seemed that time had frozen, Martina received a letter from her grandmother, a wise woman who had left her a small, aging wooden chest and a note that read, "Dear Martina." That Thursday, Martina received a letter from his grandmother, a wise woman who had left him an inheritance, a small, aging wooden chest containing a note that said, "Within this chest, you will find the only thing you need to be happy." Martina's expectations grew as he carefully opened the lid, curious to discover the secret of life. To his surprise, the chest held nothing but a tiny note written in his handwriting. Said, "In this chest, you will find the key to your happiness." The anticipation grew. He carefully opened the lid, curious to find the secret of life. He found money, jewelry, or photos of relatives. The only thing in the chest was a small note with crooked and tender lyrics that said, "All you need is to not wait for something extraordinary." Martina dropped the note, confused, then disappointed. He thought it was obvious advice, but that night, while trying to reconcile it, the phrase turned around in his mind as an insistent song. Martina was confused and disappointed. She thought, if that really was all I needed to know, and if the problem was not the absence of extraordinary events, but our passive waiting for them, then what more obvious advice could there be? The days passed, and Martina began to observe life from another angle. She noticed that everywhere, people just as common as she was lived. They had stories that deserved to be told, men and women of everyday life. Martina understood that the days had arrived. She saw life from another angle. She noticed that everywhere, people lived ordinary lives, people who deserved to have their stories told. She saw the young man who played music on the street. She saw the woman who resigned from a prestigious job to open a cafe where she sold cakes. She saw the older man who had registered in the university after retirement. These people were not heroes or people endowed with supernatural courage. They had simply tired of waiting for life to give them permission to do what they really wanted to do. Martina understood that courage was not an ability reserved for a few chosen ones. The secret to success was not about waiting for the right moment, feeling less afraid, or being stronger. It was about making a silent decision to take a small step in the direction of your dreams, even if you weren't sure where it would lead. Inspired by those ordinary people who chose courage, Martina decided to finally do something she had been postponing for years. She took her phone and called a dance academy. I had always wanted to dance, but I thought it was. His body was not made for that, and it was ridiculous. He felt a stranger's nervousness in his stomach as he walked towards his first class that night. The usual doubts tried to stop him once again. They laughed at it, and yes, it wasn't good enough, but this time something had changed. He remembered the note in his chest and the attitude of those anonymous people who had observed with admiration. He decided that he preferred to fail trying to remain a spectator of your own existence. The room with the steps was a clear and immediate introduction to a new way of moving. He was not a perfect dancer, but he was natural. At the end of the class, he went home and felt something different inside. For the first time in a long time, he felt pride, joy, and the authentic indescribable sensation of having dared to do something he wanted to do, regardless of what others said or the results. He understood something essential: life does not reward only more talented people. To those who have resolved everything, or those who never doubt, reward those who, despite all doubts and fears, choose to act not for a heroic act, but simply for an act of fidelity with him, same and that silent fidelity that does not look for applause or approval. That is the purest essence of Valentia. Martina realized that his grandmother's phrase was not simple or obvious, it was a deep truth that you can only fully understand when you live it. Martina's life did not change radically after that first dance class, but it did so. You possess something far more valuable and durable in your heart, the absolute certainty that the fear is only invincible if you decide to stay still. Courage is not the absence of doubts, it is the disposition to face them. It is the silent attitude of advancing one step beyond what is known, even though your legs tremble. It is the ability to say yes when you had always said no, or no when you had always accepted. I assure you immediate results because, at the end of the day, life is made of small acts of courage. Every day, the simple decision to say yes when you had always said no, or no when you had always accepted. Everything in silence. You have the courage to live life. What do you want to live? You know how to live it. Martina finally understood that there was no need to. Something extraordinary happened because the decision to live authentically was in itself the most extraordinary act of courage. We all think that courage is a virtue reserved exclusively for warrior film heroes or historical characters who made monumental exploits. But actually, most of the time, the courage is. He wears a layer, a pajamas, and a Rouser Tuesday. On one occasion, Sebastian, a young lawyer who accumulated stress like who collects stamps, decided to prove that meditation was the last thing in the world he would have imagined for someone as anxious as him. The pressure, arterial, and the insistence of his doctor left him with no alternative. His first session was disastrous. The instructor spoke slowly and exasperatingly, saying things as you feel the air slowly enter. Sebastian responded. I felt it in his mind, and now I know it for sure. Meditation ended up being more stressful than relaxing. Sebastian, driven by a mixture of despair and fear, decided to try again. In the next session, he returned to despair. But in the third session, something unexpected happened. While trying to concentrate, Sebastian recalled a scene from his childhood. Any day at the beach, when everything was simple and life was not yet a list of tasks. I made him smile, and then I understood that he had been doing bad meditation. He believed that it was a method to control the mind, but it was just to let things flow without trying to govern them. The irony is that Sebastian, the man I had always controlled every aspect of his life with surgical precision, had his greater revelation precisely in the act of stopping, because it is that courage is often not a matter of making one give in to the uncertainty of abandoning excessive control and accepting that nothing is certain. It all depends on one thing. Something similar happened to Lorena, a brilliant woman who'd dedicated 10 years of her life to working in a company that took more energy than she gave to it. She mechanically greeted her co-workers, and I had the hours to leave, imagining the different thousand things that I could be doing if I weren't trapped in that routine. Then one day, after receiving another absurd and unnecessary email, he decided that he needed a radical change. He did it with a creativity worthy of an artist's concept. I didn't just deliver a simple renunciation letter left in my boss's desk. I delivered a small package with a note that read, "Here is what remains of my patience." When my boss opened the package, he found a piece of rope of cachada. The act was so irreverent and full of irony that my boss couldn't help but laugh and accept the resignation. Lorena left with a smile that lasted weeks. She didn't just resign, she also had the courage to express what she felt with humor. Sometimes, courage isn't heroic or tragic. You must decide to take yourself less seriously and laugh at your own dramas. Humor instantly releases the gravity you often carry without reason. These little acts do not usually make the news or inspire epic movies, but they have something even more powerful. They remind us that being brave is not about doing something immense or dramatic. It is about making sincere decisions, no matter how small, and daring to live the life you want. We live in a society that praises spectacular success and conquest, the heroic jumps towards the unknown. But we rarely talk about the value that implies saying this. I don't want it anymore. This makes me happy. It's a form of courage that doesn't usually receive recognition, but it is precisely the one that builds lives that truly matter. Sebastian and Lorena Noir did not perform a heroic feat according to classic standards, but both in ordinary situations, people break their patterns and do something different because they are honest. Most people fear this, not because it's difficult, but because it means recognizing that fear is often the only thing standing between us and what we really want. True courage is accepting that life is a series of imperfect decisions made with limited information. We have nothing. We have no time to wait for clarity before acting. Life does not deliver manuals or guarantees of success. We must have authentic courage. We must have AP courage when we know this. We must move forward with everyone, even though we doubt. We are wrong. We are wrong 1 in 1,000 times. Decisions that are important are rarely presented with trumpets. We have nothing to fear because we have nothing to lose. Life does not deliver manuals or guarantees of success. Authentic courage is acting despite knowing that we may be wrong. Decisions important are rarely presented with trumpets or neon lights. They arrive as uncomfortable questions that we prefer to ignore. This makes me happy. I really want to continue here and will try something else, although no one else understands. Answering those questions with honesty is perhaps the purest form. Daily courage is not necessary. Dress in armor, rescue princesses, or face dragons to live with courage. Neon lights normally arrive as uncomfortable questions that we prefer to ignore. This makes me happy. I really want to continue here, and I will try something else. Answering those questions with honesty is perhaps the purest form, and daily courage is not necessary. Dress up, rescue princesses, or face dragons to live with courage. That is enough to face the simple but immensely complicated task of being faithful to who we really are. If we still have no clear idea of who that is, remember that the next time someone mentions the word courage, it is not just about great deeds or heroes that save the day. Remember Sebastian, rather than meditating impatiently to Lorena, delivering his ingenious resignation, or Martina walking towards your first dance class. Shyness and emotion fight in his chest, but he finds the courage he needs to take action. When you find it, your interior life becomes a constant adventure, where the greatest risk is never having it. Try it any afternoon in a small coffee shop in the city center. Sofia Garabatia writes a list of dreams in a notebook. He never fulfilled the typical exercise when I felt his life was too much routine. He wrote wishes in the air without waiting for them to be fulfilled, as a kind of private ritual to justify that he still kept some kind of hope. But this time, something happened differently. While writing, he felt like someone was watching her. When lifting the look, he saw an old woman smiling from the front table. His bright eyes had seen many more things than Sophia could imagine. "What are you writing so concentrately?" the old woman asked, her voice kinda curious. Sophia felt slightly ashamed for having been discovered in his secret ritual and responded shyly, listing the things she always wanted to make. The woman raised an eyebrow with genuine interest and asked, "What prevents you from doing them?" Sophia smiled nervously. The answers they gave always sounded absurd. When I said in a high voice, "I suppose lack of time, money, opportunity, you know, life, women, old woman," the woman laughed gently. She was sweet, and it disarmed me. I used to make similar lists when I was younger, But now, with my 80 years, I only make lists of the things I regret not having done. You want a Sophia counsel? I nodded, and with true discomfort, most of the things we regret in life are the things we didn't try because we were afraid. We didn't even dare to try the opportunities that came our way. Sometimes, what we call prudence is just fear disguised. Sophia was silent, surprised by the brutal simplicity of that phrase. It was as if that woman had read her thoughts, as if she had detected all the things she had not done. Excuses that had been repeated for years to justify your inaction during the rest of the afternoon. That brief but powerful conversation continued to resonate in Sophia's mind. She mentally reviewed all the things that I had not done because I was afraid of insecurity, afraid of making mistakes or disappointing others. But the most disturbing were not the postponed decisions, but the realization that most of them had been lost. I had been making excuses for years. I had been putting off the things I wanted to do. I had been afraid of making mistakes or disappointing people. I had been afraid of being insecure. I had been postponing decisions. I had been waiting for things to change. I had been waiting for the right moment. I had been waiting for the perfect opportunity. I had been waiting for the right time. I had been waiting for the right moment. 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 I know what I need. I will stop making dream lists and start acting on small things without waiting, guarantees, or searching for perfect explanations. I will simply take pleasure in trying what I discovered. In the following weeks, I will take small steps towards what I really want to discover, and each step will be much easier than the previous. I knew that the difficult thing had never been to do the things, but to start taking the first step. I knew that breaking the ice with that conversation pending, opening a book that had been postponed for fear of failing, or enrolling in a course of study were things I could do. I knew that there was no drastic or spectacular change in my life, but every day it seemed lighter, more full of meaning, and more authentic. There was a sensation of something special when you wake up knowing what would. Do something new. Do something that gets her to who she wants to be and makes her discover something else interesting. When you start living in coherence with yourself, you naturally attract people who vibrate to the same frequency. Suddenly, the empty conversations and plans that used to be obligatory no longer had a place in their life. You no longer had to excuse things that didn't. Do something new. Be who you want to be and discover something else interesting. When you start living in coherence with yourself, you naturally attract people who vibrate to the same frequency. You will no longer find empty conversations and obligatory plans in your life. You will no longer need to excuse things that do not matter. You will be interested in others more frequently. The act of courage is not a vacuum jump from a plane, but rather a simple decision to live in accordance with what you really want to be. You will no longer need to apologize or explain yourself constantly. You do not need to convert your life into an epic movie to feel that you are really alive. Many times, the most authentic experiences and memorable small decisions made with courage every day are the foundation of life. The old woman of coffee didn't know what had caused that afternoon, but his simple question woke Sophia up. Life doesn't wait for you to make decisions. It always moves forward, with or without you. I took a different step because I understood that he would expect me to be ready. This was just another way of saying that I would never start. I felt lighter, freer, and less concerned about making mistakes. I understood that life was not something that I had to completely dominate before living it. I understood that life was not something that he had to completely dominate before living it. It was enough to take simple, imperfect decisions, even clumsy ones, and discover that they were decisions that built their reality. I abandoned my life of anecdotes worthy of being remembered. Since then, Sophia adopted a new philosophy. Life should be a collection of moments determined by silent, courageous acts that reveal their inner truth. I understood that there were no small decisions, even the simplest elections. They had the power to bring her to where I really wanted to be, because in the end, the difference between living really and just spending the days waiting is deciding not to decide. He achieved absolute perfection. Despite uncertainty and doubt, he dared to decide to advance. He took another risk, felt the discomfort of the unknown, and chose to settle for the comfort of the familiar. In a corner of the world where few looked, something happened that was worth it. Ernesto was known in his neighborhood for his unique skill of complicating life. If there were two paths, he chose the most difficult one. If there was a simple solution, he preferred to create a complex network of strategies that they ended up exhausting. Some even said that Ernesto could transform a clean day in a storm. Existentialism simply compensates for it too much. It's funny that it wasn't unhappy for nature or particularly tragic in its past. It had simply acquired the dangerous habit of analyzing each situation until its brain was exhausted. Its brain worked like those old washing machines that never turned off, going around again and again. On the same problems, any decision was a mental marathon, endless. One sunny morning, while Ernesto waited in the supermarket line, he met a girl from about 7 years old who observed carefully a cereal box. She appeared deeply focused, as if she held the answer to one of the profound Ernesto humanity questions. Intrigued, I inquired, "What am I watching with such keen attention?" I discerned that the girl, without averting her gaze from the box, was of significance. Ernesto smiled, recognizing the inner conflict. I grasped the crux of the issue. The girl turned to him and, with unwavering seriousness, confided, "I can't decide whether to purchase the cereal you know, which is quite luxurious, or the one that provides stickers. If I come to regret it later." Ernesto felt an immediate sense of kinship with that girl, though she was unaware of it. He had just summed up his life, but before I could say anything else, the little girl made a sudden decision. "I'll choose the stickers because they make me happy right now. The other cereal is rich, but I can try another one tomorrow. My mom says to enjoy today and worry less." The girl grabbed her box and left happily, leaving Ernesto paralyzed between the surprise. He had been complicating for years. He had been trying to predict each future consequence of its decisions, forgetting the present moment. Life is simple, choose what makes you happy right now. You don't need to ensure tomorrow. You can start doing it now. You have been doing the opposite for decades. He had been complicating for years. He had been trying to predict each future consequence of its decisions, always forgetting the present moment. Life is simple, choose what makes you happy right now. You don't need to ensure tomorrow is perfect. How do you start doing it when you have been doing the opposite for decades? The first step was to stop looking for logical explanations. The human mind has the curious ability to generate problems where there are no concerns, where they only exist possibilities, and fear where there are only opportunities to live fully. You don't need to add new things, but rather leave behind what doesn't make you happy. Ernesto is not so much about getting more, but about releasing what you don't need. The mind cannot handle ambition and demands. It wears itself out. Simple relationships and everyday moments are not enjoyable when you try to control and explain them. Ernesto made a conscious decision to start simplifying. He stopped making endless lists of pros and cons before each small decision. He decided to say yes to experiences without analyzing them thoroughly first. Little by little, he learned to trust something much more powerful than logic, intuition. Intuition is simply the silent wisdom of the heart. It is not magic or superstition, it's an internal compass that we have forgotten how to use precisely because we get used to distrusting everything we cannot say yes to experiences without analyzing them thoroughly. Little by little, he learned to trust something much more powerful than logic, intuition. Intuition is the silent wisdom of the heart. It is not magic or superstition. It is strange, but it's an internal compass that we have forgotten how to use precisely because we get used to distrusting everything we cannot explain rationally. Ernesto began to hear more carefully that internal voice that always knew what way to choose. You were cute, when the road seemed uncertain or even slightly absurd. Curiously, the less he worried about controlling every aspect of his lighter life, the more he felt. He discovered that many problems that seemed impossible to solve disappeared simply by stopping to analyze them. Some toxic friendships that previously he tolerated them for fear of making mistakes. He cut them naturally, and they disappeared when he stopped fighting them. Life is simpler when you learn to choose. This makes you feel good now without fear. Those who try to plan everything are like tourists who spend so much time looking at maps that they forget to enjoy the landscape. They have a fair opposite every day. Tolerating mistakes is a waste of time. Cut them out naturally. When you stop fighting them, they disappear. Life is simpler when you learn to make choices that make you feel good now without fear. It's excessive to worry about tomorrow. People who try to plan everything are like tourists who spend so much time looking at maps that they forget to enjoy the landscape. They have a fair opposite every day. It began to be more pleasant because instead of passing it, Ernesto lived with authentic optimism and a genuine openness attitude. Optimism does not mean denying the existence of problems. It simply means accepting them when they arrive without suffering. He had lived 4 years with a burden heavy and unnecessary on his shoulders. That burden was Ernesto lived with authentic optimism and a genuine openness. He faced problems head-on when they arose, never suffering. He had been obsessed with understanding and controlling the uncontrollable. He released her and noticed her energy and his own humor improve. She responded with more joy and lightness, which was authentic. He knew life was fleeting and that every moment wasted on concerns was a waste. Betrayal of the immense gift of being alive. Ernesto had discovered one of the great keys to living in authentic freedom and happiness. It is not necessary to solve every small mystery of the universe or provide for each consequence of each action. Each person simply needs to make the radical decision to live in the present with sincerity, simplicity, and an open heart to the adventure of daily life. Ernesto had discovered a key to living authentically. He didn't need to solve every mystery of the universe or anticipate every consequence of his actions. He simply chose to live in the present, with sincerity and simplicity, and an open heart. He faced daily decisions by always remembering the image of the girl and her cereals, and choosing the box with stickers because living well was so simple. Choose what makes you happy right now. Tomorrow will bring new possibilities, new decisions, and perhaps new cereals. Ernesto started living with this revolutionary simplicity. Dia had always been independent, never waiting for external permissions or worrying about other people's opinions. He displayed silent and authentic courage. Freedom. Ernesto developed what he called, with humor, the philosophy of stickers after that small episode with the girl and cereal. It became a kind of mantra for every day, applicable to decisions more trivial, those that generally no one considers important, but Freedom. Ernesto developed his philosophy of stickers after that small episode with the girl and cereals. It became a kind of mantra for him, guiding his daily decisions. He applied it to decisions as trivial as which movie to watch, whether to choose an artistic film recommended by critics or an absurd comedy chosen simply because it made him laugh more. Ernesto learned that happiness looks a lot like corn popcorn. It may not be Ada, but it definitely improves the moment. One afternoon, when you meet your old friends in a coffee shop, you'll understand. Ernesto tried to explain your new philosophy. They looked at you strangely at first, as if you had just announced that you were going to live exclusively off the air or move to Mars. But when they heard it, they could not avoid recognizing the simple genius of your method. Most at the end of the afternoon, I recognized with humor that they had also been recurring victims of their own existential dramas. Raul, an accountant known for taking everything too seriously, admitted with a laugh that he had once spent 3 nights awake due to an insignificant error in an accounting report that no one had ever noticed. Ernesto, with the philosophy of the stickers in the background, said that he had more energy worrying about things that never happened than facing real problems. Raul, an accountant known for taking everything too seriously, admitted with a laugh that he had spent 3 nights awake due to an insignificant error in an accounting report. He had worried about this error more than real problems that he had never even encountered. Ernesto, the philosopher, thought that most human beings were experts in creating internal storms in external water glasses. How many times have we imagined apocalyptic scenarios over trivial decisions, only to discover, after none of that occurred, that none of it was actually going to happen? He decided that life was too short to take it so seriously and began to notice that many things improved when he decided to laugh more than himself and his own insecurities. After all, it's clear that we spend more time distressed than enjoying what is already going well. Ernesto made a radical decision. He accepted that life is not made to be completely understood, but to be lived. He decided to experience things that he had previously avoided out of fear of ridicule or failure. Despite having a voice that his friends affectionately described as particularly painful, he began painting without knowing any artistic technique. He was convinced that the walls of his house would support the Berget braid. He was better than him, and the most surprising thing was that he felt an extraordinary sense of freedom. He learned that life does not necessarily make sense and that decisions do not need to be examined logically before being made. Many times, the most authentic happiness arises from decisions that seem absurd from the outside, but which fit perfectly with the essence of who we are when viewed from within. Ernesto left, trying to look smart or correct all the time, and simply became more himself. He discovered a wonderful irony: when you worry less about the opinion of others, you become more free. We admire you. We all want that level of freedom. The philosophy of the stickers spread quickly among their close circle. It was like a charity virus that freed people from the useless anguish of analyzing everything. They did not change their lives radically or renounce his works to move to an island lost. They learned something very powerful: life is infinitely more enjoyable when you don't take things too seriously. Ernesto understood this and tried to reject responsibility or planning. He wanted to give each thing the real weight that it has, no more or less. Chaos is a succession of unexpected events that we can control. Living well does not mean having a perfect or impeccably organized life. It means learning to navigate with humor and lightness in the midst of disorder. Authentic happiness is never found in the future, but in the everyday moments where you allow yourself to be authentic, simple, and even ridiculous. Happiness is found in the small day, not in reaching great goals to make decisions every day. You can't solve all your existential problems, but you can always decide to make things better while you try. Life is not an exam to pass with honors, but rather an improvised dance. Dance with enthusiasm. If you make a mistake, laugh and try again. Life is not a search, it's a reunion. A reunion with you. The same with that person you were before. Life is a constant return to the origin, to the nucleus, purest than you are truly. You don't need to impress anyone. You don't need to pretend. You can finally breathe freely. We have committed to looking outside the answers that we already have inside. We have traveled kilometers to find wisdom that was always just below our fingertips. We have climbed mountains, waiting to reach the top of happiness alone, only to discover that it never needed to go from the place where we found to really feel. We have built strength immense around our heart, convinced that we would be pain protected. But those same strengths we came to understand that courage true does not consist of lifting walls to protect yourself from the world. It's about having enough strength to tear them down and love what you find from the other side. The authenticity is not measured in the number of things that accumulate or in the number of achievements you presume before others. It's measured in the quality of moments, in being completely honest with yourself. External fullness comes with applause and approval. Internal fullness comes from the soul's stillness knows it is enough. It has always been enough. We were born to be enough. We have spent so much time trying to be extraordinary that we forget there is nothing more extraordinary than being radically human with defects, fears, and doubts, but also with infinite courage to show yourself to life as you are, without apologizing, without hiding your scars. You must understand that they are precisely those scars that make your story unique and deeply beautiful. Maybe we have been. Don't wait any longer for clear signals to live. Living is precisely what clarifies all signs. Life is understood by observing it from a comfortable position. The shore is understood by throwing yourself into the water, letting it swallow you, and allowing yourself to be surprised. You transform nothing, but there is magic. Uncertainty is not the enemy, it is the most powerful ally. When you radically accept that you can't control everything, you start to live with a freedom that you never believed possible. Then you discover that your greatest power is not to avoid. You must learn to dance with him and recognize that life is made of lights and shadows, and that is precisely where its beauty lies. You may not have control over all circumstances, but you always have absolute control over how you respond to them. Your attitude is your brush, and life is your canvas. You are the artist, responsible for the work you are creating. Do not let anyone take your brush or paint about your history. This is your trip, your adventure, and your unrepeatable opportunity to experience life in the first person from within. This is a unique and authentic opportunity. Don't wait, life is now. This is the best time to start being radically happy, radically authentic, and free. There is no more suitable future, no more certain future, and no future except for the present. The only real thing is this second. You are living, breathing, and experiencing the heartbeat that runs through your veins. Listen carefully to the world around you as your rhythm. You are not separated from it, but deeply connected to each living being. This allows you to make mistakes without fear, laugh without limits, cry without shame, and love with all the intensity that your heart can contain. You do not fear vulnerability because it is not weakness, it is pure courage and humanity. The great secret of existence is to understand that there is no secret. Everything you need to live fully is already within you. You were born complete. You are ready to embrace life with all its complexities and wonders. You don't need permission to be who you are already, to love what you already love, or to wish what you already wish. The true revolution happens within you when you decide to live in complete coherence with your truth, internal. The world may try to convince you otherwise, but you know very well that happiness is not a goal distant, but the immediate result of living at all authenticity. You already have everything you need to take the next step. Don't wait, life awaits you. She is patient, silent, and willing to surprise you even more. When you finally decide to surrender to her, you will discover that the greatest emperor ever lived has always been waiting within you. Don't wait another day. Life awaits you. It's patient, silent, and willing to surprise you even more. When you finally decide to surrender to it, you will discover that the greatest emperor ever lived has always been within you. No more excuses. No more doubts. Live with courage, humor, simplicity, and compassion. Live fully because in the end, when you reach the last chapter of your life, you won't count the years you lived. You'll live every moment you felt with your heart completely open. You'll live again every moment you were brave. You'll live every decision made with absolute authenticity. On that last page, you'll understand that living was worth it. You were faithful to yourself. Your existence was deeply true. That is your legacy. You will leave today with the book you are writing. Each action, decision, and moment of authentic presence so far has made up your life, love, and learning. You must not expect another moment anymore. The best time to start being fully happy has always been, and it will always be now. This is not the end, it is just the beginning of a new way of living, feeling, and seeing life with eyes awake. If this message resonated with you, then we invite you to continue exploring and growing. Keep waking up with us here, making the light. You will find more ideas and answers. See you in the next audio bro. Applause.